morning, BUC.
Good morning.
Welcome to all, whether you're visiting us for the first time or have been here many times before. Whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary, recording or watching via Zoom, or watching the recording later, it's good to connect with you. By greeting our virtual community, we build a bridge between online and in-person participants. First, we will project on our screen the image of the folks who are currently on Zoom. And if you're comfortable doing so, please turn on your cameras and give us a wave. Now we invite we who are gathered here in the sanctuary in person to turn to face the camera in the back and give the folks on Zoom a wave. If you're with us here in person in the sanctuary, we invite you to join us after service for coffee and conversation in Hodis Hall, which is located to the left as you exit the sanctuary. And today is also our monthly community birthday celebration. So if your birthday is any time in January, you are invited to come up in the social hall and be recognized, and there will be cupcakes. If you're with us on Zoom today, we invite you to stay on the call for a virtual coffee hour, which begins immediately after service ends. Whenever and however we connect with BUC, we are building this beloved community.
The campus of Birmingham Unitarian Church occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. Bloomfield Hills is situated on land ceded in the 1807 Treaty of Detroit. We acknowledge Michigan's 12 federally recognized Native nations, as well as historic indigenous communities in Michigan. We also acknowledge those who were forcibly removed from their homelands, as well as indigenous individuals and communities who live here now. We affirm indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences.
We light our chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our ways, that new truth is ever waiting to break through to illumine our minds, and that new love is ever waiting to break through to warm our hearts. May we be open to this light and to the rich possibilities that it brings us. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing hymn 300 with heart and mind.
To make our purpose
This is it. And I am it, and you are it, and so is that, and he is it, and she is it, and it is it. And that is that. Oh, it is this, and it is thus, and it is them, and it is us, and it is now. And here it is, and here we are. So this is it.
Our story for today is The Three Questions. It's written by John Muth, but it's a story by Leo Tolstoy. There once was a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the right way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. Nikolai's friends understood, and they wanted to help him. If only I could find the answers to my 3 questions, Nikolai continued, then I would know always what to do. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? Nikolai's friends considered his first question. Then Sonia, the heron, spoke. To know the best time to do things, one must plan it in advance, she said. Gogol, the monkey, who had been rooting through some leaves to find something good to eat, said, "You will know when to do things if you watch and pay close attention." Then Pushkin, the dog who was just dozing off, rolled over and said, "You can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack to keep watch and help you decide when to do things. For example, Gogol, a coconut is about to fall on your head." Nikolai thought for a moment. Then he asked his second question. Who is the most important one? Those who are closest to heaven, said Sonia, circling up into the sky. Those who know how to heal the sick, said Gogol, stroking his bruised noggin. Those who make the rules, growled Pushkin. Nikolai thought some more. Then he asked the third question. What is the right thing to do? Flying, said Sonia. Having fun all the time, laughed Gogol. Fighting, barked Pushkin. Then the boy thought for a long while. He loved his friends, and he knew they were all trying their best to help him answer his questions. But their answers didn't seem quite right. Then an idea came to him. I know, I will ask Leo the turtle. He has lived a very long time, so surely he will know the answers I'm looking for. Nikolai hiked up into the mountains where the old turtle lived all alone. When Nikolai arrived, he found Leo digging in a garden. I've got 3 questions, and I came to ask your help, Nikolai said. When's the best time to do things? Who's the most important one? What's the right thing to do? Leo listened carefully, but he only smiled. Then he went on with his digging. You must be tired, Nikolai said at last. Let me help you. The turtle gave him his shovel and thanked him. And because it was easier for a young person to dig than it was for an old turtle, Nikolai kept on digging until the rows were finished. But just as he finished, the wind blew wildly and rain burst from darkened clouds. As they moved towards the cottage for shelter, Nikolai suddenly heard a cry for help. Running down the path, he found a panda whose leg had been injured by a fallen tree. Carefully, Nikolai carried her into Leo's house and made a splint for her leg with a stick of bamboo. The storm raged on, banging at the doors and windows. The panda woke up. "Where am I?" she said, "and where is my child?" The boy ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening. Pushing against the howling wind and drenching rain, he ran farther into the forest. There he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. The little panda was wet and scared, but alive. Nikolai carried her inside and made her warm and dry. Then he laid her in her mother's arms. Leo smiled when he saw what the boy had done. The next morning, the sun was warm, birds sang, and all was well with the world. The panda's leg was healing nicely, and she thanked Nikolai for saving her and her baby from the storm. At that moment, Sonia, Gogol, and Pushkin arrived to make sure everyone was all right. Nikolai felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends, and he had saved the panda and her child. But he also felt disappointed. He still had not found the answers to his 3 questions. So he asked Leo one more time. The old turtle looked at the boy. "But your questions have been answered," he said. "They have?" asked him. "Yesterday, if you had not stayed to help me dig my garden, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cries for help in the storm. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging in the garden. The most important one at that moment was me. And the most important thing to do was to help me with my garden. Later, when you found the injured panda, the most important time was the time you spent mending her leg and saving her child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them and make them safe. Remember then that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you are with. And the most important thing to do good is to do good for the ones who are standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in the world. This is why we are here." At this time, we'll have all of our children and youth join us at the back of the sanctuary as we head off to class.
The mission of Birmingham Unitarian Church is to be a free and welcoming religious community that encourages lives of integrity, of learning, of service, and of joy. One way we live out this mission is by giving half of our weekly offering to a nonprofit organization that shares our values and addresses needs within the community. Our recipient for January is Freedom House Detroit. Because of the plan to target immigrants by the incoming administration, the services of Freedom House are more needed than ever. Freedom House is a residential program that supports asylum seekers needing humanitarian protection by providing comprehensive services in an inclusive and welcoming space. Freedom House serves those who have fled persecution in their native countries and seek humanitarian protection in the United States. 70% of its clients are victims of torture. Freedom House meets 4 critical needs of its clients: legal aid, stable housing, mental and medical health, care access, employment training. Because of its comprehensive and integrated care model, 85% of its clients exit with jobs and move into independent housing. The ushers will now receive this morning's offering, given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude. It is with gratitude that we dedicate this offering to the good work of our own congregation and to Freedom House Detroit. Thank you.
In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered would you always live like this. Then the delight, when your courage kindled and you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. We hold each other in our hearts and minds with all our joys and all our sorrows. The joys and sorrows of the congregation that are shared with us this morning are these. From Larry Larson, I'm concerned about the recent hospitalization of my very good friend, Larry Friedman. His 2 children have flown in from out west as Larry is fighting COVID-19. From Carol Wiseman, the cancer has outsmarted 12 months of chemo, and our son, Alan Wiseman, started another regimen Monday. Please keep him in your thoughts. And a concern from Annis Pratt. My dear friend Aniki Kirby is in the hospital after a fall. Please keep her in your hearts. We remember those experiencing losses and those facing health challenges. We hold in mind and heart those affected by devastating wildfires in California. We pray in whatever way we pray for all those affected by war, by hatred and violence. We pray for peace. Even when the cares of the world weigh on us, may we find joy in our connections with each other and in the pleasures that life holds. Let us care for one another and for ourselves in all the ways we can. As we hold each other in our hearts and minds with all our joys and all our sorrows, whether spoken or unspoken, let's take a moment to be quiet together. Please join in singing hymn 55, Dark of Winter.
This morning's reading is entitled Thanks, Robert Frost, by David Ray. Do you have hope for the future? Someone asked Robert Frost that toward the end. Yes, and even for the past, he replied, that it will turn out to have been all right for what it was. Something we can accept. Mistakes made by the selves we had to be, not able to be, perhaps what we wished, or what, looking back half the time, it seems we could so easily have been or ought. The future, yes, and even the past. That it will become something we can bear. And I too, and my children, so I hope, will recall as not too heavy the tug of those albatrosses I sadly placed upon their tender necks. Hope for the past. Yes, old Frost, your words provide that courage and brings strange peace that itself passes into the past, easier to bear because you said it rather casually, as snow went falling in Vermont years ago.
When I graduated from high school, which was a few years ago, you can laugh. It makes me laugh when I think of how many years ago it actually was. A friend of my mother's sent me a congratulatory card that said, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life." That may have already been a cliche, but at the time I thought it was quite a profound sentiment. Now I've come again to the sense of the profundity of that truth. Today is the first day of the rest of your life and mine. These words from Joy Harjo, the Native American poet who was Poet Laureate of the United States, resonate with me. I like to think of a new year being possible at any moment, as every moment is a kind of doorway. New beginnings and new adventures can start any day. Today or any day is a good day to set intentions and make resolutions. In August 1723, that would be 300 and a few years ago, Puritan theologian Jonathan Edwards developed a list of 70 resolutions to live by, further resolving to read over his resolutions at least once a week. I found many of his resolutions theologically irrelevant, since many were focused on avoiding going to hell. But this one, number 6 on his list, seems timelessly appropriate, regardless of our own age, regardless of theological underpinnings. Number 6, resolved to live with all my might while I do live. Resolved to live with all my might while I do live. Here is a self-assessment tool for a balanced life, developed and passed down through a few generations of Unitarian Universalist ministers, that might provide the basis for some resolutions. Some questions for your consideration. Have you heard the birds at dawn lately? Have you apologized to someone you have hurt? Have you laughed hard enough to make your stomach ache? Have you thanked someone for something they do every day? Have you listened to an entire symphony? Have you spent an entire day without talking? Have you contacted a friend you've been out of touch with? Have you cried? Have you thought about death and the value of each day with clarity? Have you visited a depressed friend? Written down a dream? Sung in the shower or any place else, like in church? Have you visited the place where you grew up? Have you listened to someone's pain without offering advice? Have you dared to share your own distress or a problem? Have you supported a group or cause or church that upholds your ideals? And lastly, have you loved yourself even if you didn't do well on a test? The fundamental question is, how do we spend our time? How do we spend our lives? The passage of time is both subjective and determined by the laws of physics. These days, time may seem to have slowed down or speeded up, or both. The days long and the months, even the years, short. It's 90 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock. Founded in 1945 by Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and University of Chicago scientists who helped develop the first atomic weapons in the Manhattan Project, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists created the doomsday clock 2 years later. Using the imagery of apocalypse, midnight, and the contemporary idiom of nuclear explosion, countdown to zero, to convey threats to humanity and the planet. The doomsday clock is set every year by the Bulletin Science and Security Board in consultation with its board of sponsors, which includes 9 Nobel laureates. The clock has become a universally recognized indicator of the world's vulnerability to global catastrophe caused by human-made technologies. On January 28th of this year, the Bulletin Science and Security Board will reveal the 2025 Doomsday Clock time. For 2025, the board will consider multiple global threats in the clock setting, including the proliferation of nuclear weapons, disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, the Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Hamas war, Israel-Hezbollah conflict, bio threats, and the continued climate crisis. By almost any measure, 90 seconds to midnight is not very much time. Our perception of time depends on how or whether we think about it. A New York Times columnist offered this analysis. The main reason that time seems to slow down, at least on longer conscious timescales, is that you've been thinking about it. If you're bored at a dinner party, you're looking at your watch and thinking about how to speed up the time between now and when you can leave. And later, when you think back on the party, mostly what you'll remember is how interminable it was, because most of those memories involve wishing that time would speed up. Conversely, when we say time flew by, typically what we mean is, I lost track of the time. Time seems to fly by during that movie or that workday or that year because you are so engaged that you aren't paying attention to the, wow, it's 10 o'clock already. In effect, the experience of time flying by is an indicator that you're busy, involved, engaged, doing something you enjoy or care about. And the columnist notes that although time can sometimes fly past, by definition, you won't notice until it's over. Time never flies, it only ever has flown. Well, I wondered about this because we do, after all, sometimes say things like time is flying by. But to make that observation requires momentarily stepping out of the action to reflect on it. So perhaps it's true that time never flies, it only ever has flown. We live our lives in eras and in small increments. Minutes, hours, days, years, moments, lifetimes. As the writer Annie Dillard observed, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. A couple I knew were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and I heard someone wish them 50 more years, which might possibly have been an overambitious goal. The husband wisely responded, "We'll start with 51, and we'll take it a year at a time." That's how we got this far. A familiar adage, which was quoted in the July 1891 edition of the Unitarian Journal, attributed as the old Quakers' words, reminds us that we only go around once. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any human being, Let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Unlike the old Quaker, physicist Stephen Hawking suggested that time travel might be possible. In his briefer history of time, he offered this limerick. There was a young lady of white who traveled much faster than light. She departed one day in a relative way and arrived on the previous night. However, Hawking posits what he calls a chronology protection conjecture, which says that the laws of physics conspire to prevent macroscopic bodies from carrying information into the past. In support of this conjecture, Hawking says that when space-time is warped enough to make time travel into the past possible, calculations employing quantum theory show that particle-antiparticle pairs moving round and round on closed loops can create energy densities large enough to give space-time a positive curvature, counteracting the warpage that allows time travel. Nevertheless, says Hawking, the possibility of time travel remains open. In a book titled 11/22/63 by Stephen King is a thought experiment about time travel. In the book, the protagonist travels back in time with the mission of preventing the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The book jacket notes, "Never has time travel been so believable or so terrifying." Dum dum dum. Spoiler alert, it didn't turn out well. Contrary to Stephen Hawking and Stephen King, physicist Sean Carroll declares that time pushes along, willingly or not, in a single predetermined direction toward the future. He posits that travel into the distant future is relatively easy and could be accomplished by moving really, really fast. The arrow of time moves in only one direction. He says, the future only, not the past. Carroll states that just about everything about the arrow of time, what we would think of as how time works, the fact that the past is set in stone while the future can still be altered, is all because of entropy. Now, maybe you learned about entropy in physics class, or maybe you learned about entropy when Chris Sloan talked about it about a year ago. Entropy is the measure of a system's disorder, which creeps up over time, as indicated by the second law of thermodynamics. Carroll states that the continual growth of entropy, starting with the origin of the universe, fills the world with irreversible processes that divide the past from the future. The making of an omelet and the mixing of milk into a cup of coffee are events that work in only one temporal direction. As I was reading Stephen King's book about time travel, it occurred to me that in real life, in our real lives, there is one way to change the past, even the tragedies and the horrors. That is, we can change the past by learning from it and giving it meaning. Robert Frost had hope, not only for the future, but even for the past, that it will turn out to have been all right for what it was, something we can accept, mistakes made by the selves we had to be, not able to be perhaps what we had wished, or what looking back half the time it seems we could so easily have been, or ought. The future, yes, and even for the past. There is hope for the future, and hope for the past, and hope for the present. Hope for this world we live in. May we help to make our hopes real in our lives and in our world. Please rise now in body or in spirit and join in singing hymn 350, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time.
The ceaseless flow of endless time, no one can check or stay. We'll view the past with no regret, nor future with dismay. The present slips into the past and dream like melts away. The breaking of tomorrow's dawn begins anew today. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now, to make each day a thing complete shall be our New Year vow.
We extinguish this flame, a mere wisp of matter in process, almost as insubstantial as the thought of it. Yet our civilization has harnessed the power of such a flame to drive and shape a new world. So may it be with the power of our thoughts, that in truth and love they may drive and shape us and our world. May we live our lives fully and creatively so that we may be a blessing to ourselves, to each other, and to all those whose lives we touch. Please remain seated during the postlude for a time of contemplation before we greet each other.